Hi there, and welcome to another video tutorial for MediaMeter V3. Today we'll be giving an overview of the dashboard. The dashboard contains various charts and sets of data about your topic buckets, as well as different ways of further exploring that information. With all of these options, there will be no single best way of using the dashboard, so just play around with it and you're sure to find something that fits your workflow. Similar to the mentions feed, the dashboard is controlled by a set of global filters. Once set in the mentions feed, these carry over to the dashboard. But you can also make some changes to these filters from here. As you can see, we can change the topic bucket, your media sources, the date range, country, and also a few metrics that you can use to filter your results. Right below the filters are our overview cards. These provide you some top-line figures on the selected topic, including total article count, and also top media source, publisher, author, and program. Trend information is also provided, helping you see how the topic is performing relative to the prior period, which will be the same length as time as your selected date range. You can click on any of these cards to find even more information. Now let's take a look at the various charts and cards of the dashboard. Below the overview is a media exposure stack bar that shows you a breakdown of stories according to the type of media they came out in. The Explore Data button in the top right of the chart is something that you will encounter in different parts of the app. These buttons take you to a drill down with even more insightful data. The chart itself is also clickable, as are all of the graphs on V3. For example, if you want to look at the stories that came out in broadsheets, simply click on the daily segment of the bar, and a mentions table will pop up with those stories. Try to do this for the other charts as well. We'll come back to the Explore Data button a bit later on. Next are cards that provide a view of how the different sources performed over the date range. We have figures for average publication score, a new metric that measures the influence and reach of publications, websites, and broadcast channels. We are also given total AVE, or add value equivalency, average story value, and average word count. Below that is a chart for topic emphasis, which is a concept that we talked about in our video on the mentions feed. This allows you to see the breakdown of stories in which the selected topic was the main topic, and where it was a subtopic or just a passing mention. Again, you can click on any of these parts of the bar to see the actual stories. Next is a tonality distribution chart showing the number of stories that were graded as positive, negative, or neutral. If you want to see the positive stories, simply click on this green part over here. And you can do the same for negative and neutral stories. And then you also have an Explore Data button, and this is something that you will see throughout the dashboard. Frequency distribution, meanwhile, shows the number of stories that came out for various values of the selected metric, in this case, story value. Here we can see that there were 296 stories with story value 2.3, and only 17 with a higher story value of 5.9. There were only 3 that had story value of 9. You can click on these bars as well to see the stories in the mentions table. So if you want to look at these stories over here with a high story value, then you can click on this little bar over here. Below that is the timeline, and it's exactly the same as in the mentions feed and works in the same way. But in case you missed our last video, this blue band over here Running through the chart represents a forecast that's based on a moving average. This allows you to see whether the topic is outperforming or underperforming relative to this average, which is handy for benchmarking. The next chart is a top publisher's events drop. This shows you the volume of stories that came out in the publications that put out the most stories about the topic within the date range. If you hover over these points, you will be shown some information on each of the stories that came out on these dates. Author story value distribution, meanwhile, shows you which authors put out the stories with the greatest potential brand impact, which is what story value measures. Here you have the option of either a bubble chart, with the size of the bubbles representing the relative influence of the author for this specific topic, or you could also switch to a bar chart. This part of the dashboard can be very useful for media relations, as it shows you which journalists and bloggers are most invested in talking about the topic at hand. And if you want to see the stories that they actually wrote, simply click on their bubble. There you have it. Media exposure distribution, meanwhile, shows us pie charts comparing the different media sources according to various metrics. Media exposure distribution shows us a tree map that compares the different top publications in terms of the number of stories that they put out about the topic at hand. This also relates to the media distribution pie charts below that. Here we are able to compare the different media sources according to these various metrics. This behavior changes if you decide to compare multiple topic buckets, which we'll get back to at the end of the video. Finally, we have a tree map that shows us the entities and categories of entities that were most frequently mentioned in the stories in this topic bucket. For example, GPE, which stands for Geopolitical Entity, had the most mentions in this topic for the date range. If you click on this, it will expand to show you the specific entities that were mentioned. You can do the same for the other categories as well, all of which are automatically identified by our entity extraction algorithm. Many analysts will have this need. You might have separate buckets for different competing brands, or maybe you have buckets for different issues that your organization might find important. If you want to easily compare topic buckets, simply click on the Compare button at the top of the dashboard. Here you can compare the different topic buckets that you have already set up, with a maximum of 4. Simply click on the checkboxes, and then click on Compare. The dashboard and all of the charts within it will then adjust to reflect this comparison. This is an extremely useful tool for benchmarking, and will be particularly important for brand communications. And there you have it, our new and improved dashboard. Catch our next video where we'll talk about our authors and publishers pages. See you in the next one.